In January 2023, just after Indian billionaire Gautam Adani toppled Jeff Bezos to become the world's second richest person, a New York-based short seller delivered a gut punch. Hindenburg Research accused the Adani Group of pulling off what it called the largest con in corporate history. Despite the Adanis denying the allegations of stock manipulation and fraud, a stock sell-off wiped more than $150 billion off the group's value. It shook investor confidence in the massive conglomerate and in India's equity markets and its regulators.
Adani's CFO denied all these allegations.
India's Adani Group says it's exploring legal action against a US short seller, Hindenburg Research.
Up until now, he's sort of been out of the eyes of global scrutiny.
And concerns around that and how they faring financially have been brought up before.
Since then, Adani has won a reprieve from the Supreme Court. The shares have recovered as a group slashed debt and won over new investors. It's against this backdrop that the 62-year-old founder revealed to Bloomberg that he wants to step down when he turns 70. And he's executing one of the world's largest and most challenging transfers of wealth to the next generation. The $250 billion Adani Group controls a big chunk of the infrastructure that runs India's $4 trillion economy. And a complex leadership transition from Gautam Adani to his two sons and two nephews is loaded with risk for the group, as well as the country and beyond. In a rare and exclusive interview in which Adani would only discuss succession, Bloomberg's Anto Antony asked the tycoon if the Hindenburg report had an impact on his plans.
Mr. Adani, you said that the succession plan was conceived about 10 years back. Now the last 2 years incidents, the investigations, Hindenburg report, has it affected it in any way, the implementation?
In hindsight, I can say that it is this incident makes family more together and work very hard to fight it back. And I definitely basically see that they have converted this incident into the great opportunity for family uniteness. Secondly, they work hard, and whatever corrections in each and every aspect of our businesses we have to do. And in fact, basically, these Hindenburg issues of this last year was Adani Group history is the highest performance.
As part of the succession plan, Gautam Adani's nephew Pranav, the eldest among the four, oversees most of the group's consumer businesses. He's also leading one of the company's highest profile projects, redeveloping Asia's largest slum, Dharavi, located in India's financial capital, Mumbai. Older son Karan runs the cement, ports, and logistics businesses, which are among the biggest in Asia. Karan's younger brother Jeet is looking after India's largest network of privately operated airports, along with the group's defense business that builds weapons from small arms to missiles. And their cousin Sagar oversees the group's energy projects, including the contentious coal arm. He's leading efforts to build the world's largest renewable energy park on a barren salt flat in western India.
When the Hindenburg report happened,
in a series of exclusive interviews, the four of them told us about the fallout from the short seller's allegations.
I would say that this report came as a shock to many people who were not expecting anything of this sort. From our viewpoint, purely this report was nothing but accumulation of everything that was written and alleged over the last 10 years before that, but also very beautifully gift-wrapped and presented in a way that was, explosive and shocking, so to speak. There was nothing significantly new in that whatsoever anyways. So everything that the report said was in some way, form or the other there in news before. More importantly, the report that came, we gave a very, very long and comprehensive response in just 72 hours on every single point of the Hindenburg report. Strategic long-term global equity partners, they've only doubled down. since the Hindenburg report came. So our institutional shareholding has only in fact increased going from that point on, rather than go the other way around.
For some of the second-generation Adani leaders, the Hindenburg report came as a bolt from the blue, and they had to act quickly to ensure that the business continued to operate smoothly.
I think it was definitely, personally speaking, a very stressful and tough time. Emotions were high. But I think the most important thing that was on my mind definitely was, what can I do to support, obviously, the family? But more than that, how do I support the larger family, which is the employees? Because the biggest risk that you run in times like these is demotivation. People, sort of losing hope. And to make sure that everyone is motivated, everyone knows that what we are doing is for a greater purpose, it's for, we're making real impact, and we continue day on with the work. Because these things, they happen, they come, they go. But we don't want to lose motivation.
One overhang, even right now, is the kind of investigations or probes which are there into the company. And also at the same time, there are allegations regarding opaqueness in the holding structure. How do you assuage the investor concerns on this front?
See, I think if you look at from investor perspective, right, as a group, we went through this transition from 2007-8. So if you remember, in 2007-8, we had a holding structure. We had Adani Enterprise, and then we had all the other companies which were subsidiaries of it. And again, getting feedback from the investors, they said that we would like to have a clean structure. And that's where we started demerging. So ports got demerged, Adani Power got demerged. So basically the shareholders who want to invest in ports, they know that they come into APSZ. Or investors who know that they want to only invest in energy, they know that they want to come into renewable. So one is, there is a clean structure from a holding perspective. So there is no crisscross holding, which is very common in other groups in India. So there is no crisscross holding which is happening. So it's a very clear structure. Family holds directly into each of these entities. Second is, when you look at from a family perspective, family holding perspective, all of that has been disclosed, because we have 23 or 25 international issues, bond issues across various group companies, again rated by all international agencies, investment grade rating. And part of it, unless you don't disclose all of this, there's not much of, you don't get through that hoops of getting that rating. And so all of that has been disclosed.
There were learnings, I would say, from the whole Hindenburg episode. As a group, we have always been very focused on operational excellence, on execution. There are times when we have missed out in the kind of communications that we should do to our shareholders, to media in particular. Now, from an optic point of view, we have become very clear that we go out and communicate more transparently about the structures and about things like the finances, and we are going out communicating more.
But at least 7 of the group's companies have received so-called show-cause notices from India's markets regulator, SEBI, about allegations of non-compliance with listing regulations. And according to Bloomberg reporting, U.S. prosecutors are examining whether an Adani entity or people linked to the company, including Gautam Adani, bribed officials for favorable treatment on an Indian energy project. The Adanis say they have not received any notice from the U.S. Justice Department. The DOJ says no Adani unit has been charged with wrongdoing, and that investigations don't always lead to prosecutions. Coming up, the next generation answers the critics who say their family is too close to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP.
Being close to a political party does not necessarily mean that you get the work.
When Inside Adani continues.
मोदी जी की हार होती है, स्टॉक मार्केट कहता है भैया मोदी जी गए तो अदानी जी गए. मतलब डायरेक्ट रिलेशनशिप है, करप्शन की रिलेशनशिप है.
That's Indian opposition leader Rahul Gandhi, right after the 2024 elections, in which Prime Minister Modi's party lost its majority in parliament. Investors sold Adani company stocks as soon as the results were announced, cutting the group's market value by around $45 billion. While they've since regained ground, the sell-off highlighted a key concern with the Adani empire.
Many people attribute your business growth to how you strategize your company's priorities to that of the government's priorities, whether it is state or center. Is that something that you will ask the next generation to continue?
No, so that is basically group has decided, irrespective of the government. Okay, when whatever the government basically decide the priority for the nation's point of view, we always basically focus our business in that direction. And I strongly believe that when you basically business directions towards government priorities, you always basically get the tailwinds and not the headwinds. And that helps your group to grow faster.
The opportunities in India's infrastructure sector are enormous. Morgan Stanley predicts that the country will drive a fifth of the world's economic expansion this decade, generating more than $400 billion in annual output growth. Any fresh bid by the Adanis to get an even bigger slice of that pie may face closer scrutiny under a weakened BJP government.
There seems to be a widely held perception that the group's fortunes are very closely tied to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's. How do you address this concern?
See, I think there is a very strong difference between perception and factual reality. People's perceptions beyond a point we can't do much about, but if you look at factual reality of what we've done across the group, right? Majority of our growth period as the Adani portfolio of companies and the Adani Group overall has come prior to the time of Prime Minister Modi. Even today, when a certain party is in power, we work in 22 different states all across the country. Many of those states are non-BJP states, right? Ultimately, what people don't realize outside is that from a business perspective, most of the businesses is done in the states, not in the center.
Being close to a political party does not necessarily mean that you get the work. You get the work because you are able to deliver, you are competitive in a market, and you are able to deliver on your commitments, and especially in infrastructure business. We are not a fly-by-night operator. If I have taken a concession of building a port, I had better deliver it, because if I don't deliver it, I cannot have 15 ports. I will be stuck at one port. Same as in the power or in renewable. So wherever we have delivered on that promise, we have delivered the infrastructure, and delivering greenfield infrastructure in India is not easy. We have made it one of the most profitable, and we have run it in the most efficient manner. You don't have these three things, there's no point being close to any political party, or because today's India is no more about giving favors. It is all about whether you're competitive in the landscape or not.
The Adani's strategy of aligning with the government's priorities has helped it become almost too big to fail. It's India's top importer of coal, its largest owner of renewable energy farms, and its second biggest manufacturer of cement. Adani-owned ports carry half the country's shipping containers, while more than 80 million people use its airports each year. And now the group is taking its influence global, again aligned with the government's strategic priorities. It's developing ports in Vietnam, Israel, and Sri Lanka that seek to challenge China's regional dominance.
We are also invested in a lot of neighboring countries. Now, when we enter any neighboring countries, besides financial decisions that we take on the project, how good they are, we also look at what that host country requires. Whether it's infrastructure, energy, resources, we are aligned with those countries' national priorities. And the most important is the strategic interest of India also should be aligned. So when all those three aligns, I think this is the best investment strategy. So I think it's false and incorrect to say that, Adani Group is only invested or is only looking at where, the present party is invested.
I think the ambition is by 2030 we want to be handling at least 1 billion ton of volume, predominantly coming out of India, because as India is going to grow, the trade is going to grow, and obviously and we are in the right position to take that sort of growth. I think the second part is to give a reliable supply chain solution into our neighboring countries and making India as a center point of that whole supply chain. And that is the idea, that how rather than cargoes getting transshipped in Dubai or in Singapore, how do we make India as a center point of the overall supply chain from east to west? And that's where we are looking to play, to create that larger vision of making India as a center point.
The biggest example of how deftly the Adani Group can pivot towards a government priority is this massive renewable energy park they're setting up in the dusty salt flats of western India. Covering an area 5 times the size of Paris, it's expected to power 18 million homes when it's completed in 5 years. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has promised that renewable energy will fulfill 50% of India's energy needs by the end of this decade. So the Adanis, who are India's biggest coal importers, say they're planning to invest over $100 billion into their renewable energy plans.
We'll participate. From our perspective, the predominant preference and the push is to invest in renewables. So more than 80% of whatever we are doing across the group is more than 75% of all capital we are spending across all the group companies is in sustainable energy solutions. So that's transmission lines for evacuating green power, that's investing in generation capacity of renewables, that's in distribution verticals that we have which enhance the mix of green energy in our distribution companies. So it's basically across different things, but with a predominant focus on sustainable and green energy, we'll invest roughly around $100 billion across the next 10 years in various energy sources.
So in line with the government's current projections and roadmap, what is the timeline within which you are looking at phasing out the coal?
So government's looking at a gradual ramp down until 2060. So we have a lot of assets where we have PPAs. And we have obligations in which we have to supply to various state government discoms, central utilities, and to many discoms and to the end consumers ultimately. So those obligations, contractual obligations, of course, have to be met. Our thermal platform is completely ring-fenced. It's completely independent. So with the cash flow that that company generates, that company takes its independent call with regards to how it wants to invest its own cash flow. Some of it they'll use for growth, some of it they'll use to distribute. But again, all of those plans are going to be dependent on the demand profile of the country.
Up next, we ask Gautam Adani how he'll avoid the family fractures that have roiled rivals.
Disintegrations will never happen in the Adani Group. And I'm very much confident, and for that.
When Inside Adani continues.
When I gave the G2 the options of independent businesses, they decided collectively that they want multiple businesses but one family. So they have a strong unity among themselves. The succession is all about both continuity and change, and it is a gradual process. This will ensure that the succession is seamless, is a smooth, and a sustainable. The structural succession plan is supported by a strong cultural values. Our values provide the glue that holds together our arrangement.
Gautam Adani says under his succession plan, the 4 scions will need each other to run their businesses. Common services for the entire group, such as HR, finance, IT, and administration, have been carved up among the 4 to make them communicate and work closely with each other. HR is under Karan, while finance is under Sagar. Jeet runs IT and digital strategy, while Pranav leads communications and branding.
And when you move to the second generation now, if there are differences of opinion are bound to arise, how will you deal with those?
So biggest key is communication. Unless we don't communicate with each other unless I don't know what my cousin or my brother is feeling or what is their thinking process, or they don't know what I'm feeling and thinking. What we have learned is that we need to keep communicating. There's going to be difference of opinion. That is the advantage of four of us, because we keep the check and balance.
So already there is a very, very close interaction between all the G2 members. We have our regular meeting cadences. We meet in a very structured manner once every week. We make sure that all important decisions are all socialized, are all discussed jointly, and there is, in different aspects, different people take leads, but everyone's views are always incorporated in however we do everything. So that's something that we have already been practicing over the last about year and a half, and that's something that's becoming deeper and deeper and deeper as we move forward.
And under the new leaders, the conglomerate may shun the high-risk, high-reward strategy that's been Gautam Adani's hallmark.
Your father is a first-generation entrepreneur who, from the scratch, built one of the largest conglomerates in the region. When the transition happens, for you to step into his shoes, those are some pretty big shoes to fill. How will you go about it?
As you move from first gen to next gen, I mean, we realize that what they're leaving us behind is a sort of a legacy, as well as not just a business, but a platform which we have to protect and ensure that we pass on to the next generation as well. We also realize we can't work the way he is working, in the sense that his risk appetite is much higher than what ours is. So we realize where our shortfalls are, where our strengths are, and we work on our strengths, and whatever we have learned from him, all the wisdom that we have learned from him, we try to work on it on a day-to-day basis.
But hunger for growth is something which differentiates Adani Group from many others, as Mr. Gautam Adani has said. Now, risk appetite is a key part of it. Why are you saying that in the second generation, the risk appetite could be slightly
less? It is bound to
less?
happen, right? So this is evolution of life. First generation, you have grown from nothing. Your risk appetite is much higher, because even if you lose everything, you're back to where you had started. We are starting from a level which is something higher than what they had started. So we have a larger responsibility to make sure that we protect and to grow from there.
Without any formal hierarchy, business management will almost certainly be testing and time-consuming. But Gautam Adani is counting on what he calls the family's cultural values to make this a success.
Mr. Gautam Adani has talked about the middle-class values that the group espouses. Now, the second generation has mostly born into wealth. Is there a pressure to conform?
I would differ over there a little bit, because we've not been born into wealth. A large part of our childhood has been through a struggle as a family. It's just that in the last, 15, 20 years is what we see. But a large part of our childhood has been of struggle. We have seen our parents struggle everyday basis. We have seen them go through tough times as well as good times. We have seen them aspiring for more and working hard. And we have seen them dream together to reach to that aspiration. And we have also seen a lot of support from the larger family, and more importantly, valuing what we have.
We are very thankful to our first generation to help us with the value system, because it is the value system and the culture that really will take us through generation and generation, and we are trying to imbibe the same value system in our third generation, in my son and in future generations.
Thank you.
And once the transition is complete and once you have more time at hand, what would be your plans?
Oh, ultimately we will retire and be more relaxed.